The sheets going. Oh, pencil, top drawer. All right, guys. We're going to go over the review sheet today, and your test is tomorrow. So.
Is it over this?
Yep.
Who's our review tomorrow?
Yes. So for problems 1 through 6, solve for the indicated length. Are there questions on problems 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6? Let's do number 1, and then we can get to 5. So these two lengths here are congruent. So they're the exact same. So what that means for us is that we can set 3x plus 4 equal to 6x minus 2. And solve for the value of x. And once we find the value of x, we can plug it back in to find the length. So the first thing we can do is subtract 3x from both sides, which will tell us that 4 is equal to 3x minus 2. Then we can add 2 to both sides, which will tell us that 3x is equal to, divide both sides by 3, telling us x is equal to 2. Then we need to plug it back in. So it doesn't matter which one we plug it into, so we can do 3 times 2 plus 4. Well, 3 times 2 is 6, and 6 plus 4 is 10. We could have also done 6 times 2 minus 2. Well, 6 times 2 is 12, and 12 minus 2 is 10. So the indicated length that they were looking for, AD, is equal to, well, AD is just going to be 10. And you do need to make sure that they're asking for which segment, because both of these here worked out to be 10, and the distance from A to D is 10. And not that it's asking for that part and not asking for, say, AC, the whole length. So it'd be good to just make sure which part it's asking for. Any other questions on number 1? So we can look at number 5. Now, given this setup, well, we can say that these two lengths are going to be the same. So 7x plus 14 is going to equal x plus 50. Now we can solve for the value of x and then plug it back in. So the first thing we could do is subtract x from both sides, telling us that 6x plus 14 is equal to 50. Yes, then we would subtract 14 from both sides. Six x is equal to 36. Because at this point here we can divide both sides by 6, telling us x is equal to 6. Now again, it asks for an indicated length, so we'll have to plug it back in. So we can use 6 plus 50 is 56. So BC equals 56. Got your review sheet? There's one over there. Any other questions on 1 through 6? Okay. Any questions on 7 or 8? Yes. So for both of these here, we're going to set up the two equations equal to each other, solve for the value of x, and then plug it back in. Any other questions on 7 or 8? Are we ready to look at the next set? Any questions on 9 or 10? Well, because of the setup, we can set these two equations together, set them equal to each other, solve for the value of x, and then plug it back in. So we can still look at it, because this here would be 2x plus 30 is equal to 4x minus 4. I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides. You can subtract 4x from both sides, and that would work out just fine. I'm going to subtract 2x because it's going to give us a positive x. It still works out the same, because our next step would be 2, add 4 to both sides, which tells us that 34 is equal to 2x. At this point, we can divide both sides by 2, telling us x is equal to 17. So we can do 2x plus 30, so we can say 2 times 17 plus 30 to find out the length. 2 times 17 is 64, plus 30 is 64, and we wanted to know the length of AP. So circumcenter is our perpendicular bisectors, and incenter is our angle bisector. So both of these are circumcenters. So any other questions on this one here? Incenter, so we have angle bisectors. Because these are angle bisectors, it means that these lengths are going to be congruent. So that's really telling us that 7x plus 46 is equal to 3x plus 20. Solve for the value of x and then plug it back in. Seven x minus 3x is going to be 4x, plus 46 is equal to 20. And then we can subtract 46 from both sides, which will tell us that 4x is equal to negative 26. And last but not least, we can divide both sides by 4, telling us that x is equal to because 4 times 7 is 28. 4 times 6 is, so negative 26 divided by 4 is going to be negative 6.5. I'm going to throw a pin. And that's fine, because we still need to plug it back in. Now, if we plug this back in, 3 times negative 6.5 plus 20. 3 times negative 6.5 is going to be negative 19.5 plus 20. And negative 19.5 plus 20 is 1/2 or 0.5. So our length would be 1/2. And it actually works out, if we plugged it into the other equation, we would get 1/2. Because 7 times 6 is 42, and half of 7 is 3.5, which would have given us a negative 45.5 plus 46 would give us 1/2.
So PF would be.
Any other questions on this here? Let's look at the next set. Fill in the blanks. So looking at this here, AE, BD, really these need segments, because these two sides would be parallel. CD would be parallel to AF, because we want the whole length. And lastly, CB would be parallel to EF. Now these are all mid-segments. So it works out, so we're starting with AC. DB. Would be 1 and CE. Because these mid-segments are connecting to midpoints. So C, D, and B are all midpoints, which means these two segments are already congruent, and we know that these two are, just because of the fact that those 3 points are midpoints. So CD, this one here, is half the length of the third side. Well, the third side is already cut in half because of the midpoint, so these 3 segments are all going to be congruent. DF and DE. DF and DE. Questions on this here? (14, 15, and 16). Which one do we want to look at? 15. Find HL and KJ. Well, HK is going to be 10 because those two segments are congruent since K is the midpoint. So HL is 10 plus 10, which is 20. Now, KJ and HI are a mid-segment in the third side. So the mid-segment is equal to half of the third side, or the third side is equal to twice the mid-segment. So what we can say is the third side, 3x minus 6, is equal to 2 times x minus 1. This setup here is a little bit easier to work with because 3x minus 6, that's not divisible by 2, so it's a little bit harder to work with. But this here will always work out to give us whole numbers. Now the first thing we can do is to distribute the 2, so it won't change the 3x minus 6. But over here we're going to have 2 times x, which is 2x, and 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. Now we need to solve for the value of x by subtracting 2x from both sides. Add 6 to both sides. Which will tell us that x is equal to 4. Any questions on how we found the value of x? So which equation would we plug it back into? Which is? So 4 minus 1 is? Over here, if we did 3 times 4, 3 times 4 is? Well, apparently we didn't do that. 3 times 4 is 12, and 12 minus 6 is 6. Is the mid-segment equal to half the third side? This 3 is equal to half of 6. Well, half of 6 is 3. And that's it. Any questions on this here? Are you ready for the next one? Well, this here is, any questions on 16? We good? Because really, if we were to set this up and solve it, we could add these together to set these equal to each other, find the value of z, and plug it back in. Same with these here, and these here. And whatever these two lengths are is going to match up with this one, and so on, yes? And if I wanted to find the perimeter, perimeter is just adding all the side lengths together. Questions on 17 or 18? Okay, 18, given CE is 16, is CE, which is the length of 16, is the 16 the bigger, smaller, or the whole? Bigger. Well, the smaller is half of the bigger, yes? So since 16 is the bigger, half of 16 is? So BC is 8. We still need BE, which is the whole, and I can just add these two together. So really, once I get the bigger or smaller, I can find the other. Yes? Let's look at 17. FC, well, FC, is it the bigger, smaller, the whole? It's the whole length, yes? Well, the bigger is equal to what times the whole? 2/3. The shorter segment, the smaller segment, is equal to 1/3 of the whole. So what we could do is I could take 20 and multiply it by 1/3, or divide it by 3 to find out what the shorter length is. And this would give us 6 and 2/3, or 6.6 repeated. Well, to find GC, I can just take the shorter length and do what? Multiply it by 2, yes? But what do I also know? That the bigger and the smaller will add together to give me the, what is the whole? 20, yes? What do I need to add to 2/3 to get to a whole? 1/3, yes? Well, 2/3 and 1/3 do give me a whole, which would turn it from 6 to, what plus 7 is 20? And also, if you're in the calculator, you do 6 and 2/3 times 2, you will get 13 and 1/3. I'll take it in either form, but if we do have thirds, if you can put it in a fractional form, put it in a fractional form. If you want to put it in a decimal form, put it in a decimal form. So for this here, you could say 6.6 repeated and 13.3 repeated. As long as it's the correct answer. Any other questions on 17 or 18? Are you ready for the next set? Questions on 20 through 26. So which one's going to be bigger? Because 68 is bigger, so this side is bigger. Which one's going to be bigger? Because the angle opposite AC is bigger. Same type thing. So looking at this here, which angle would be bigger? .25 is the bigger side, so angle E would be bigger. Bigger angle is opposite the bigger side, and the bigger side is opposite the bigger angle. So here it would be angle A. And I think that gets us up to 30, yes? Okay. So it does change colors a little bit. I think it gets a little bit easier to see at 31. Well, for some of y'all, it should have an answer key and then another set, yes? Because I added those in to it. I didn't think it was a big addition to add these because it's not adding too much. Because 31, 32, and 33, which one of those do we want to look at? Huh? 31. So we're wanting to list from biggest to list what? Angles. Angle B, because it's opposite the biggest side. And then angle A. Biggest is 70, smallest is 34. And that puts us with 49 in the middle. So this would be the order of the angles. And that's it. Any other questions on 31, 32, or 33?
So would 32 be angle A?
Yes. Angle F, angle G, and angle E. Any questions on this here? Okay, now it's the ones that y'all were trying to do a minute ago. List them from biggest to smallest, and this time we're talking about the sides. Well, all three of these here, do we have all three angles? We have to find it. Now, you don't have to write out the steps for this, because I think most part you're doing these in the calculator at this point anyways. Right, and that's, so most of the time I think you did at this point, pull out the calculator, do 47 plus 61, which would be 108. Then you would do 72. So the biggest angle is 72, which is opposite the length of BA or AB. 72 is opposite. 61 is the next biggest angle, which is opposite BC. And then AC is last. Any other one that y'all want to look at for these three? We ready for the next type? Determine the possible value of the third side of the triangle from the given two sides. So these here, we're looking for not just a answer, but an inequality. Because according to our theorem for the sides of a triangle, any two sides added together must be greater than the third. So which one of these in particular do y'all want to look at? 39. So we would have 41 plus 101 is greater than our third side. We would also have the case that 41 plus x is greater than 101. Well, we have one other case, don't we? Because we could also have what? That x plus 101 is greater than 41, yes? Why do we not care about this third one? 101 is already greater, so it's not really going to tell us anything. If we actually did this here, it would tell us that x is greater than negative 60. Well, yes, because if we're talking about lengths of a triangle, they have to be positive, and if it's going to be a triangle, the third side has to be greater than 0. This tells us nothing. So we're really looking at these two here. Well, for our first one, well, I can do 101 plus 41, which will tell us that this is, x is going to be greater than, so 142. So we're saying x cannot be greater than 142, because if x is greater than 142, then the sum of these two sides is not going to be greater than the third side. Over here, well, we do have to do some solving. We would have to subtract 41 from both sides, which tells us x is greater than 60. So what that means for us is that 60 is less than x is less than 142. So the length of the third side, for this to be a triangle, can be any number between these two amounts. Any questions on this here?
So is x basically?
Yes. We just use x to define it for a variable that we can solve for. Now we use the same variable across all three because we're talking about the same length. If we were talking about two different sides, then we would use x and y. We would use two variables, one to define each. But since we're talking about the same side length, we're going to call them all x, or all the same. We could have used y or z or any variable. Any other questions on this here? And I believe that brings us to the last set, yes? Well, what did we just say? If it is a triangle, any two of the sides added together will be greater than the third. So I can look at, do you guys want to look at 40, 41, or 42? So we can just say 6.5 plus 8.9 is going to be greater than 2.4. Well, let's go on and do this here, because if we add these two together, 4 carry the 1, which would be 15.4. Is 15.4 greater than 2.4? Okay. Let's switch two of them. Let's switch the 8.9 and 2.4. 6.5 plus 2.4 is greater than 8.9. 6.5 plus 2.4 is 8.9 greater than 8.9? No. So can this be a triangle? Not a. Yep. Because really the first one worked because both of these sides are already greater than 2.4. It's going to work. But really, once we had the two smaller sides on the same side of the equation, didn't work out. Any questions on this here? Any question on anything else we've covered so far? Okay. So tomorrow is your Chapter 6 test. Okay? Yep.